Olu was known in his village for his courage and sharp instincts, even though he had yet to make a great catch. He was barely 19, with eyes that burned with determination and a heart that pulsed with the rhythm of the wild. Every morning, he would venture deep into the forest, hoping that today would be the day he returned not with small game, but with a story worth telling. The elders spoke of spirits in the trees and magic woven into the very roots of the forest, but Olu, though respectful, believed only in skill and persistence. One misty morning, while tracking a deer through a shadow part of the forest he had never dared enter before, Olu stumbled across something odd, a clearing bathed in golden light, silent and still, as though the trees were holding their breath. In the center lay a bough, carved from a pale, glowing wood with markings that shimmered like starlight. It looked untouched by time, resting atop a moss-covered stone. Curiosity overwhelmed caution. He reached out and grasped it. The moment his fingers closed around the grip, a soft, melodic whisper brushed against his ear. "Help me," it said. Olu turned sharply, heart pounding, but no one was there. Only the gentle rustle of the trees answered him. Shaken but fascinated, he carried the bough back with him. That evening, he tried it for the first time. With one swift shot, he brought down a gazelle from a distance no hunter had ever managed before. The villagers celebrated, calling him blessed by the gods. But as he stood among the cheers and laughter, he heard it again, faint, pleading, feminine. "Please, help me." It came not from the forest, but from the very string of the bough. The next morning, Olu awoke before dawn, the strange whisper still echoing in his mind. He examined the bough closely. Its surface felt warm, almost alive, and the shimmering carvings pulsed faintly in the morning light. A part of him wanted to return it to the forest, but the memory of the gazelle and the village's admiration was too fresh. Maybe the voice was just a dream, he reasoned. With that, he slung the bough over his shoulder and set off again. As he ventured deeper into the forest, Olu began noticing unusual things. Birds watched him from the branches with eerie stillness, their eyes far too intelligent. Squirrels and deer paused mid-motion, staring at him before vanishing into the underbrush. But one bird stood out, a beautiful forest bird with feathers like emerald and gold, perched high above on a gnarled branch. Unlike the others, it did not flee when he approached. Its eyes were strange, too expressive, too human. As he raised the bough to test its aim on a distant tree, the bird cried out, not in a chirp, but a soft, desperate voice. "No, please, don't." Olu froze. The voice was real. It came not from within his mind, but from the bird. He lowered the bough slowly, heart pounding. The bird remained still, watching him with a sadness that chilled his soul. When he took a cautious step forward, it flapped away into the deeper woods. Bewildered and unsettled, Olu followed it for a while, but it disappeared into the dense thicket. That night, back in his hut, the whisper returned louder than before. "You found my bough. You hear me now. Please, free me." Olu sat upright, breathing hard. This was no dream. Something, or someone, was trapped. And he had become part of our story. Olu paid a visit to Bobatade, the village's oldest and wisest man. The elder sat beneath the great Iroko tree as he always did, humming to himself and tracing symbols in the dirt with a crooked staff. Olu approached cautiously, holding the bough wrapped in cloth, unsure how to begin. Bobatade opened one eye before Olu could even speak. "You carry something that was never meant for man," the old man said gravely. Startled, Olu unwrapped the bough. "I found it in the forest. It helps me hunt, but I keep hearing a voice of a woman crying for help." Bobatade nodded slowly and motioned for him to sit. Many seasons ago, the forest belonged to the Spirit King, guardians who watched over its balance. One of them, a princess named Amok, was betrayed by a jealous suitor who wished to keep her magic for himself. He cursed her, binding her soul into the form of a bird, and locked her magic into her bough. Only the purest act of love, one that expects nothing in return, can break the curse. Olu's hands trembled. So, she's alive. The bird I saw, her eyes, yes. She's still here, watching, waiting. But beware, Bobatade warned, his voice growing darker, those who have used the bow for selfish gain often lose their minds, or worse. The bow rewards, but it also binds. Its power is not without cost. Olu sat in silence, the weight of the bow growing heavier in his lap. He had thought it a gift, but now it felt like a burden. He had stepped into a forgotten tale, and if he continued to use the bow, he would become part of its ending, whether tragic or redemptive. For days, Olu avoided the forest. He stayed within the village, helping with chores, pretending the bow was no more than a tool resting beside his sleeping mat. But the whispers would not stop. At night, Amok's voice came more clearly, full of longing and sorrow. "You are kind, Olu," she would whisper. "Don't leave me in this prison." Her sadness settled into his bones, haunting him even in his dreams. The village elders, noticing his absence from the forest, grew curious. One approached him in the evening. "Olu, have you grown fearful of the hunt? Your hands brought meat to many. Are you content to sit idle now?" Olu forced a smile. "The forest feels different now. I must understand it better before I return." But deep inside, he was torn. He had tasted praise and glory. The people respected him. The children followed him with admiration in their eyes. Without the bow, he feared becoming invisible again, a mere boy with no story. Yet the thought of using the bow, knowing that each shot deepened a princess's torment, made his heart twist. One evening, he took the bow and stood at the edge of the forest, wrestling with his conscience. A fat rabbit darted into view. His instinct screamed to notch the arrow and fire. His hands moved on their own. The arrow flew, and the rabbit dropped instantly. But this time, the whisper was not soft. It was a scream. Agonized. Piercing. A cry that echoed from the trees and shattered the air like glass. Olu stumbled backward, the bow falling from his hands. He looked around wildly, but saw no one, only that same bird perched high above, feathers trembling, eyes wet. Olu realized then, every time he hunted, he was hurting her. And still, he did not know how to stop. The next morning, Olu awoke to a strange sight. Perched just outside his hut was the emerald goat bird, the same one with the human eyes. It stared at him, unmoving, as if waiting for something. He stepped out slowly, holding his breath. It didn't flee. Instead, it tilted its head, then flapped its wings and flew off toward the forest. But after a few beats, it circled back, hovered briefly, then darted forward again. It wanted him to follow. Olu grabbed the bow, unstrung, and slipped into the trees after it. The forest seemed quieter today, almost reverent. The bird led him deeper than he'd ever gone, past twisted vines and whispering branches, to a part of the woods where the light fell in golden shafts. He recognized the place. It was the same glowing clearing where he'd first found the bow. The bird landed on the moss-covered stone and looked at him with an urgency that pierced his soul. Then something extraordinary happened. Its feathers shimmered, and for a brief moment, Olu saw the outline of a young woman, tall, radiant, with eyes like morning mist, standing where the bird perched. It was only a flicker, but it rooted him to the spot. "Who are you?" Olu asked aloud. Her voice answered, not with sorrow this time, but with hope. "I am Amok, and you are the first to listen." He dropped to his knees before the stone. "Tell me what to do. Tell me how to free you." But the answer was not a list of steps. It was a whisper of intent. "You must love, not with desire, but with sacrifice. When you learn to let go of what gives you power, only then can I be free." The clearing fell silent once more, and the bird took flight, vanishing into the canopy. Olu sat in the stillness, shaken. The first piece of the puzzle had been laid bare. But could he truly let go? As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the village, Olu returned with heavy thoughts weighing down his spirit. Though he hadn't hunted, people greeted him with admiration, asking if he had another tale to tell. Children ran to his side, begging him to teach them how to shoot. One boy even said, "When I grow up, I want to be just like you, with a magic bow and eyes that never miss." Olu smiled weakly, patting the boy's head. But inside, shame was blooming like a dark flower. They praised him for a gift that did not truly belong to him. The bow had made him powerful, but at the cost of someone else's freedom. And worse, each praise and cheer only tempted him further to continue using it. That night, a feast was held to celebrate a bountiful hunting season, thanks in no small part to Olu's success. The village chief himself raised a cup in Olu's honor. Never before have we seen a young man bring such glory to our people in so short a time. Surely the gods smile upon you. Olu stood, the bow slung over his shoulder like a symbol of heroism. As he looked out at the faces full of admiration, he hesitated. He opened his mouth to speak, to perhaps tell the truth, but the crowd burst into chants of his name. Olu. Olu the unerring. The cheers made his heart thunder. But when his eyes met the distant edge of the forest, he saw a flicker of movement, the golden bird watching silently from afar. Amok. Even amidst the cheers, he felt a stab of guilt. The glory tasted sweet, but it was built on chains. And each celebration only deepened the prison of the one soul who had trusted him to listen. Days passed. Olu kept the bow hidden and refused to hunt, feigning illness to escape the pressure from the villagers. The whispers from Amok grew softer, tinged with patience but also pain. He knew she waited. But what was he to do? Sacrificing the bow meant losing the respect he had earned, and perhaps never being able to help her again. Doubt clouded his heart. One afternoon, he wandered to the river that wound like a silver ribbon through the forest. It was a sacred place where hunters often prayed before their journeys. He sat on a rock and watched the water rush by, hoping for clarity. Then, from the other side of the riverbank, he saw her. She looked human. A girl with dark, radiant skin and wild, curly hair knelt beside the water, her fingers trailing its surface. She wore a dress made of green leaves and forest silk, almost blending into the surroundings. Olu stared, unable to move. She looked up, and he saw her eyes. Those eyes. The same eyes the bird had. Amok, he whispered. She stood, the river separating them, and nodded gently. This form. I can only hold it for moments when the moon is kind and the forest permits. Olu rose to his feet. Why me? Why now? You heard me, she said softly. No one else ever has. And you listened. I want to help you, he said, voice breaking. But I don't know how. She smiled sadly. Help is not in slaying beasts or earning praise. Help is in love, a love that sets free. Before he could speak again, a wind stirred the trees. Her form shimmered, and she vanished, leaving only ripples in the river and a deep ache in Olu's chest. He had seen her. Not just the bird, but the girl within. And now, he knew, time was running out. Olu couldn't sleep. That night, he sat by the dying embers of his fire, the unstrung bow across his knees. The image of Amok, real, human, beautiful, burned in his mind. It was no longer just a voice or a bird. She was alive, trapped in a curse that bound her to the forest, to this bow, to him. And now he understood why the bow came to him, why it chose him. Not for glory, but for redemption. At dawn, he returned to Bobatade, desperate for answers. The elder sensed Olu's urgency and motioned him to sit. You've seen her, haven't you? Olu nodded. She took human form, by the river. Just for a moment. She said the curse can only be broken by love that sets her free. What does that mean? The old man leaned on his staff. The curse was woven by a dark sorcerer who once courted Amok. When she refused his hand, he turned her into a bird and sealed her magic within her haunting bow, her most prized possession. He believed that no man could ever love her enough to release her without wanting to possess her power. So every time I used the bow, Olu murmured, I was feeding the curse. Yes. The bow grants greatness, but every arrow tightens her chains. Only a man who would give up everything the bow offers, even the fame, even the glory, just to set her free, only he can undo what was done. Olu's heart ached. But if I destroy the bow, won't I lose her forever? Perhaps, Baba Tate said gently. That is the risk love must take. Olu sat in silence, the truth heavier than any burden he had ever carried. To save her, he would have to give up not just the bow, but everything it brought him. Was he ready to let go? The next morning, Olu stood again at the forest edge, the bow in his hand, strong but untouched. He had made his decision, but his heart wavered. The whispers from the village still echoed in his ears, songs of praise, tales of his unmatched aim, children idolizing him. Could he really return to being just an ordinary boy? Could he bear the disappointment in their eyes? But then he remembered Amok's face, soft, full of sorrow, yet glowing with hope when she looked at him. That moment by the river had carved itself into his soul. She wasn't just a cursed spirit. She was someone who had lost her freedom, her voice, her body, all because she refused to be owned. And now, Olu held the key to her freedom. He ventured into the forest, following the path she had led him through before. The golden clearing awaited him like a dream brought to life. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a warm glow over the mossy stone where he had first found the bow. The bird was already there, perched and watching, her eyes filled with unspoken questions. Olu stepped forward slowly, then placed the bow gently on the stone. I won't use it again, he whispered. You are not my tool. You are not my secret to keep. I set you free, even if it means I lose everything. The bird let out a long, trembling cry, part sorrow, part release. A wind swept through the clearing, lifting leaves into a spiral around them. The bow glowed faintly, then cracked down the center with a sound like thunder muffled by earth. As it split in two, a burst of light surged from within, wrapping around the bird in golden tendrils. And then, the bird was no more. Where it had stood now stood Amok, real, whole, and staring at him with tears in her eyes.